Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Trent with Bully Barn. I got a couple unique questions that I want to answer, and I know I've been telling you guys that I would answer a few questions that you have in the comments, and I got one the other day on Instagram that really kind of struck me just as super interesting. And to me, I think a lot of people, especially new people that get into the breed and start breeding, they don't quite understand. They think if you just use a Grand Champion dog, you're just going to get a good champion or Grand Champion quality dog. And that's not always the case. Often that's actually not the case. So the question was, what are your thoughts on a Grand Champion or Champion dog not producing champions or Grand Champions? And it was just real interesting to me. The reason being is, a lot of times you may think that a dog, just because it's a champion or a Grand Champion, like, yes, that means that dog is, I would say, in the top 10 to 20%, as far as, as being a nice specimen. But that dog itself was bred a certain way to be what he is, or it was just luck, a dog's just an anomaly, turns out that way. But a lot of times, just because you use a champion dog or a Grand Champion dog doesn't mean that you're going to get a champion or a Grand Champion dog. Because a lot of times, the reason you're putting two dogs together is because they complement one another. This dog may have everything that you need, but still have a high rear and a little bit weak in the pasterns or something like that, as far as a male goes. And you may breed to a female that has everything that dog's lacking. You take those two dogs together and boom, you have a phenomenal dog. So I'm not saying that when you breed a champion or a Grand Champion that you're not going to get, obviously, some good features and traits that do pertain to the standard, because you will. There's a reason that dog's a champion or a Grand Champion, because a lot of his traits and qualities, meet the standard. But when you are choosing a dog to breed to another dog, those dogs have to complement each other. So that's a really big deal. I've bred two dogs together that are not champions and created champions. So, that's not to also say that you couldn't use a champion or Grand Champion dog and obviously get a champion or Grand Champion dog. So that was a real interesting question to me. I think the more that you breed, the more that you get into it, the less you're going to care about a title and the more you're going to care about what the dog itself can give you. For me, I guess to answer that question, I would just say, make sure that no matter what, you're not just breeding hype, because you can breed hype and get decent dogs, but you're going to be a lot more proud of yourself and you're going to head in the direction that you want to head in a lot quicker, breeding dogs that complement what you lack in your yard, what features and traits that you're trying to bring in. So that's the answer to that question. Another question that I had was, somebody asked, how did I do the inbreeding on Samson? I did it twice. And it was also a very interesting question, because inbreeding is very tricky. Depends on, inbreeding a dog could go terribly wrong or, really good. It just depends on how you do it. And there's also a little bit of luck there. You can't guess every bit of it. But if I had to explain how I did the inbreeding, because every inbreeding is going to be completely different depending on how the dog's bred, on top and bottom side of the pet, the dog that you're inbreeding on and the dog that you're breeding to. And that was where I benefited from. I took Samson to his own daughter, Rory. Well, the bottom side of Rory's pedigree was completely outcrossed. It wasn't heavy Dax, and Samson's pedigree is not heavy Dax on the bottom, but it's very heavy Dax on top. So it's tricky. So, I inbred Samson to his own daughter, but his own daughter, her whole entire bottom side of the pedigree was completely outcrossed. So it allowed me to have more genetic diversity, a bigger gene pool. That way it allowed me to breed that tight. And I still could have had stuff that went wrong, but you try your best to limit, as much risk as possible. And it worked out really well for us. But like I said, every inbreeding is going to be different. Depending on how the dog is bred on the top and bottom side of the pen, how heavily the dog is already inbred or line bred, and then that also depends on what dog you're breeding that dog to, and how much relation is the female to the male. If you're breeding the mother to a son, same thing, But I will say that I think safer inbreedings are like half brother, half sister. I think those are a lot safer. But also when it comes to inbreeding, I would not inbreed a dog at all unless the dog is like an anomaly. Unless the dog is absolutely spectacular. Nothing behind that dog even comes close to being what that dog is. And that's exactly what Samson was. Just a freak, No dog behind him is even close to being what he is. And I do think if you're trying to line breed, if you kind of get the grasp of it and you kind of know what you're doing, I would line breed, continue to produce the certain traits and features that you're wanting. And when you finally produce a dog that is like, wow, like, holy crap, this dog is an anomaly. Nothing else behind the dog is as nice as what that dog is. Basically, you outproduced every single dog in the pedigree. And you got that one wow factor dog. When you get that dog, that's when you should inbreed. You should inbreed that dog. Then you take that dog, after you inbreed that dog to several of its daughters, you get back some really nice dogs. Now, when you inbreed, you are going to lose some substance. You're going to lose a little bit of mass, a little bit of bone. I've learned that. When you inbreed, though, keep a couple daughters off the inbreedings that you do. If you land a super nice son off the inbreeding, you could also use that dog as well. But when you outcross to those females, that's when you're going to see fireworks. Like, that's when you're going to see all the hard work that you put in come together. But make sure when you outcross, though, that you're outcrossing a dog that complements not only the dog that you produced, but the dogs that you used back in the pedigree, the dogs that you did inbreed on to produce that dog, or the dogs that you line bred on to produce that one dog. Make sure the dog that you're outcrossing with completely complements that whole entire line of dog that you've been working on that produced the one dog that you did the inbreeding on. Make sure you have the same nice, beautiful traits and features that you have, but also make sure that the dog that you're using is going to help improve and counter the things that you don't like about the dog that you produce and inbred on. And there's a million different ways to put it, but that's my best answer to you guys on that. That's what's worked really well for me. You can take a look at Twix, for instance. I'll throw Golden Bear up here. We'll throw a picture of Golden Bear and a picture of Spirit. Those are two really nice dogs that I got off the inbreeding with Samson that I kept. There's plenty of others that ship to the UK and China, but we're not talking about those right now. Golden Bear and Spirit. Golden Bear shipped to China, but he's already produced really, really well here in the United States just off of the one breeding that we did with him. We produced Bougie Bee and Bunker. There's a couple other nice dogs in there too, but they're not as heavily promoted. But I want to talk about Twix, guys. Twix is off of Spirit, which is Golden Bear's sister. She was an inbred Samson female, and that was, my best female. I only had a couple, but that was my best female off that. I took and outcrossed her with Buckus, Grand Champion Buckus, that I thought was, the perfect dog for her. And that's what produced Twix. So I will say that, I've had success with it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what I can do with Twix. Also, if your outcross landed like it did for me, for you guys, when you land a dog like Twix, and he has the traits from both your inbred dog and your outcross that you desired, that you wanted, okay, you take that dog and you breed and start line breeding with that dog to refine your traits and features that you want to keep. But if you ever lose a certain feature or trait or any particular thing that you like off the first inbreeding that you did, you always keep a little bit or co-own a dog or whatever, and have access to that at some point, where if you get too far away from it and you lose a little bit of what you had, you can breed back to it to retain those certain features, such as like cheeks, or, you know, that's one thing that Samson really gave me, was beautiful cheeks. So if I ever get away from, you know, that super cheeky, beautiful head and nice, small almond eyes, wide set, you know, just, although there's things I still improved on, even with Twix. Like with Twix, I got a little bit of a shorter muzzle, but I got a wide muzzle. I got a very wide muzzle with Twix, and I didn't have as much of that with the Samson stuff. I also got a lot bigger, bullier rib cage, a bigger body. I got a little bit more bone. I got a better rear end. I got a shorter back. So if I ever get to where I get away from those things, I can always come back and breed, you know, right back to something that I produced that was heavily bred Samson, to give me back those cheeks, so I can retain those certain features and traits that I wanted. But I just wanted to give you guys a couple questions that I've had. I want to answer kind of in depth, you know, on what I think about them, but also kind of simply put for you guys. But anyway, guys, that's my answers to the questions. If you guys have any more, feel free to put them in the comments. Follow us on Instagram at bully.barn.b. Follow us on Facebook at bullybarn. We have some other stuff coming soon, especially on co-owns and other stuff and other breedings that we have coming up. Right now, we're also importing a few super nice females from Colombia and Spain. We're going to talk about that in another video as well. But anyway, guys, for now, you guys have a good one. If you have any questions, my number is 405-568-6846. You guys take it easy.